Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Flynn, and I'm here with
Scott Lang.
And we are the Band Dads, here to bring you a podcast about something that we care very dearly about, which is music education and band.
Some of you are here because you want to learn about all things band. Some of you are here because you want to see a train wreck, and the answer is yes to both of those. We don't care why you're here. We're going to answer all the questions. We're going to say the things you're thinking. We're going to debunk all the myths.
Yep. This is the Band Dads Podcast.
The podcast by and for confused band parents.
Nice. You said the tagline.
Chris, behind Darrin are those squares. That's one square from every show.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that idea.
Yeah, for the most part. There's a few, like this one's on that's Carnegie Hall right here.
Okay.
There's some other cool ones up there. Some Rose Parade.
Where's the picture? Where's the picture of the day we met, Darrin?
Oh my God.
It's over here in the trash can.
Oh, like recently
Chris,
discarded.
Tell him the opening you were going to go. You wanted to go with.
Oh, what was going to be my first question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why Scott Lang? Like what? Like
no, but you were talking about when he talked to Miles. Remember that?
Oh, okay. So yes. Okay. So we did have a conversation, obviously, with the Miles Denny at one point late last season. And he said that, well, Scott actually kind of pointed this out on his behalf, that when he met with you, that he was very humble, that he sat down and was very open to say, tell me everything I'm doing wrong. Right. So if he was that comfortable with you, I thought it would be probably good to do a similar exercise. So my first question again was going to be, tell me everything that Scott's doing wrong.
We don't have that kind of time.
Always willing to keep my ego in check. Welcome, everyone, to season 2, episode, we think 3, but we never know.
We're not sure. Yeah.
Of the Band Dads Podcast. I'm Scott Lang.
Chris Flynn.
And we're the
Band Dads.
Chris, why don't you introduce the episode?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about going into this episode. We've talked about band camp. I've done my best to bring you into the trenches of band camp, have the experience along with the kids so you can understand what they're going through, what that experience is like for them. But ultimately, what's the kind of the purpose of what they're constructing during that time? So we thought that it would be a good segue into what goes into a marching band show. So Scott and I could talk about that a lot, and we do talk a lot, and we figure that maybe it's time to hear somebody else's voice for a little bit. So for the purpose of how do you construct a marching band show, what goes into it, we thought it might be good to bring a guest along, which if you're watching the video on YouTube, which of course you all are, you can see that person is present. But I certainly don't have the honor of doing that introduction. Mr. Scott Lang's going to do that. So Scott.
So we realized, once season 2 came around, we wanted to hear from some other people. And so when we decided we wanted to explain show design to people, we reached out far and wide. We spoke to dozens of experts. And then we landed on Darrin Davis because he was the only one that said yes.
Landed on, huh? Wow.
No, well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you not only just the leading mind in the marching arts. He's the director of bands emeritus at Pride of Broken Arrow in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. He is a DCI and BOA judge. He's a BOA Hall of Fame member. He's a Bandmasters, American Bandmasters Association president. And most of all, and probably the greatest honor that he could have, is being the first guest on the Band Dads podcast. That's got to be huge for you, Darrin. That's going to be a square up there eventually, isn't it?
Is that fair, though? Is that fair to Smile Smenny to say that, though? Is that fair to the Miles Denny? I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, he's our band director. That was just more of a point to refute. Wow. But now we've got the real Darrin Davis. Darrin, thanks for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
How's it going, guys? Hey, we got to get some things straight. You tend to embellish. I have never been a president of the American Bandmasters Association.
No. I said you were president of the Band Dads fan club.
Oh.
Which is way more prestigious.
Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure I heard that right either, to be honest.
The way that we've designed this is that this is going to be a 2-part episode. And the way we're breaking it down is from the design kernel, the idea, the design kernel to day 1 of band camp. Before the kids ever see anything, before they get everything. Because the way I kind of conceptualize it, watching you work, Darrin, is that what happens in your head and on paper in a MIDI file, once it goes on field, is a very different product. And that you make changes throughout the season to the show design concept. And I want to talk about that, but I want to break it down. So for all of our listeners, and I'm going to shut up in just a minute, but for all of our listeners, we're basing, especially part 2, but this entire podcast on the most recent Grand National Championship. And Darrin has won 5 of them, 6?
4.
4. I embellished.
Should be about 6 or 7, but it's 4.
On his latest one, which was called The Edge of Eternity, which, for those of you who are geeked out on BOA trivia, is the highest scoring show in the history of Bands of America Grand Nationals. So we're going to use that when we reference that for copyright purposes. We cannot share those materials with you via this podcast, but if you are able to use the interwebs and Google and YouTube, you can find a show that you can watch so that you have a reference. But we're designing the podcast so that's really about your show, that you can take Darrin's thought processes and Darrin's concepts and Darrin's protocols and apply them to your show. So with that being said, take us back to 2021. When did The Edge of Eternity, how did it happen? Was it a musical nugget? Was it something you saw? Was it visual? Was it a beer-induced haze? How did that show first pop into your mind?
Well, you got to understand that at Broken Arrow, I'm fortunate that I have a really large team of designers that I'm one part of that. And it was led by Wes Cartwright, our program coordinator. We had a specific music designer, visual designer, choreographer, and percussion designer. And all those elements kind of come together with the lead mind with our program director, program coordinator, which is Wes Cartwright. But before Wes really would pick a show, he and I we'd have conversations. And most of the time it would be, like September and October, a year out from that, while we're working on the previous year's show. And we'll start having those conversations like, okay, we know what we're doing this year. What's the feel that we want to have? Do we want to be edgy, for next year? Do we want to have more symphonic sound? What are the big nuggets or big descriptors? And after we had finished the 2019 show, which was all about having fun, and it was called Yeehaw, and we were in cowboy outfits and cowboy hats and doing all Americana show. We were looking to the next year of like, hey, we want to do a show that's really elegant, really classy, makes you feel good, a little deeper in meaning. And then we started that design process, and then lo and behold, this thing called COVID happened. And so the show that we were going to do for the fall of 2020 end up becoming Edge of Eternity. And, the show title stuck for 2 years. We really had 2 years to design that show. Because of all the COVID restrictions, we did a different take and a different style of show for 2020. So 2021 was really a 2-year work in progress, which, you don't have that luxury, in all settings. But we knew that we wanted it to be elegant. We knew we wanted it to be pretty, for lack of a better word. And Wes came up with this piece that he found on the interwebs by Arturo Cardelis, a composer I'd never heard of before. And he said, this piece is like 10 minutes long. I want you to watch. We're going to watch the YouTube video together. We're not going to say anything to each other. We're just going to listen for 10 minutes. And it was a piece that's it starts with the composer playing piano, and then it layers in a string quartet, and ends up the ensemble is a string octet and piano. And it's probably the most seminal moment musically that I've had as far as having that forethought of what we were going to see and what we were going to do for our Edge of Eternity show. So the piece is called Grace by Arturo Cardelis, and you can find that on YouTube. What a phenomenal piece, and it became kind of the cornerstone of us putting that show together.
Okay, so I've got 2 questions for you. One, if you go back 20 years, what percentage of shows had a visual genesis? What percentage of shows had a musical genesis? And what percentage of shows was a combination therein?
I mean, those are great questions. And every time I do whether it's a band director clinic, and this session that we're doing that's, geared towards band parents, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, Yeah. Can I turn around a couple questions to you?
Yeah.
So if you're into Broadway theater at all, have you seen Hamilton?
Yes, absolutely. Several times.
What came first, the music or the story?
The story. He read the book.
Of course, right?
Right.
So the story came first there. What about the movie and musical Wicked, which came first, the music or the story?
The book. It's a series of tales. Snow White, the Evil Witch. It's a series of tales where he inverts all the characters. He makes good bad and bad good.
Okay, one more. How about the musical, or was turned into a movie, Mamma Mia? Which came first, the music or the story?
The music.
The music did, right?
Right.
And so,
did I get 3 for 3? Do I get a gold star?
You know, I mean,
you just rehearsed this ahead of time. Come on.
We actually didn't, you know. Darrin and I went to New York last summer, and we saw Hell's Kitchen. I don't know if you know that show.
I do, but I haven't seen it.
It's all the music of Alicia Keys, you know, that everybody knows, and then they put a story together to that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you start thinking about marching band. You know, we liken ourselves a lot to producing a Broadway production on the field. That's kind of what it really is. Mm-hmm. And so which of all those different shows, which one had the best idea? I mean, they're all equally great in different ways, but some were created with the music first. And like Hamilton and Wicked, they were created with the story first, or the visual first. And I think that's common with a lot of designers. You know, is it the idea or the music? If you're talking about Broken Arrow for 2021, it was kind of a synthesis of both, but it actually started with that piece of music that Wes played for us called Grace. It was inspiration.
When you know, two questions, and they kind of go together, which is one, when you hear something, how do you know it's going to work or be good? And part two, knowing some of the personalities in that room. They're strong personalities. They're visionaries. They're people who believe in what they believe. Give us an example of when people disagreed and how you dealt with, you know, I want to do this concept or this music and I don't. And what does that look like in a design meeting?
Yeah, because you went from cowboys to the edge of eternity. Like, that's a pretty big leap. So is everybody on board? Yeah. What does that sound like?
Well, I will say this: it takes trust, right, of each other. That although as designers you're going to respect each other on what they're brilliant at, everyone kind of has their lane of what they're really, really, really good at, and then there has to be someone that has to be the head chef, right? There has to be someone that's really deciding what the dinner is going to be and preparing that. And you know, for years I trusted Wes Cartwright. We were synonymous in how we did that when we were designing shows together. Wes is the idea man, and then, you know, he'll refute this, but I always had veto power. I just rarely had to use it because of my trust in Wes was so good and so great that I could see his vision or hear his vision really quickly. And then I think the rest of our design team, there are moments where they really kind of disagreed. I mean, I'll give you an example. There was the year that we did an all Americana show, all patriotic music. And Wes started with Stars and Stripes Forever as playing some source music. And then he played the national anthem. And it's like, wait a minute, we're making a show out of this. This could be go off the rails and be really cheesy and really corny. Yeah. And there was just, you know, there was some concern with our staff members, but then it was all about like, but let's put our spin on these very familiar themes and how we're going to do a show. And, you know, Broken Arrow has a look and a sound that I think is unique to that band that we were able to pull, you know, that USA show off, or the Cowboy show, or Edge of Eternity. So different, all of them.
And I'm going to nerd out here. And Chris, I'm just terribly sorry because I have such an intimate knowledge of all the Broken Arrow shows and exactly what he's talking about. So is that sound, Darrin, how much of that is design versus instruction? In other words, you teach a certain sound, but your percussion arranger, your brass arranger, your front ensemble arranger, Jim Wunderlich, you know, he has to write for that sound. Am I correct?
Yeah, you're exactly right. There's a sense of pacing that I've always had musically. We do Broken Arrow is well known for doing big, grand moments and then coming down to nothing and shaping us back to making the big moments are extremely grand. The other thing that is personal to me has been to Wes and our design team over the years is we live in melody. You know, we're partial to what we want to hear a tune and we want to hear melody. There's lots of marching band shows that are all great that to me, they're like variations on rhythms and stab chords. And that's just not my cup of tea. That's not what our design team likes, but another design team, they could love that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's everyone's personal preference. So
okay,
I think,
so go ahead. I apologize.
I was just going to say, so I think that's where there is a personal touch to the director, to the design team, and what the character or the identity of your band's going to be. It needs to have something that you're remembered for. And for us, it's never been about we're going to be the group that does a cowboy show or Edge of Eternity. We're somewhere that we always keep you guessing. But I think when you look at Broken Arrow, and we can talk about this more, what that look is, and the sound of Broken Arrow, we look and sound always like Broken Arrow.
So go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, so to that point then, as much as those design elements are important, I guess to Scott's, original question, you have to have some sort of level of consistent instruction that still allows you to create that sound within those different frameworks.
No kidding. You're exactly right, Chris. So you can have the best musical score on the planet, but if you don't have the teachers that can inspire kids to be better than they ever thought they could be, to make better sounds than they ever thought that they even thought were possible, and have a system to do that, then you never get that sound, right? Yeah. And there's a culture in our band at Broken Arrow that those kids are hungry for instruction, and there's really, really great teachers teaching them every day that we know, like Nick Saban, when he was coaching the Alabama Crimson Tide, he has a system, that was all his own. And it was about believing in the process, believing in that system to create a championship attitude and a championship football team. We would do the same thing and try to do the same thing, where it's about, we have a process of, we know where we're going to start and where we're going to finish over the course of an entire season. Right. Trust in these baby steps, because there's no shortcut to being incredible at the end of the season.
So that has to feel good for Chris, because in our last episode of Bandcamp Part 2, Chris talks about if you had to give advice to a parent, it would be trust in the process. And then the second part, which I added in, was and play the long game. That it's a long season. So, okay, you and Wes and your team have decided on what you think is going to be what will become Edge of Eternity. Now, you are going to do all 10 minutes of Grace, for sure. So at what point do you start reaching and montage it? Tell me what's next.
Next is the internet dive. And, 30 years ago, it was going to the CD stores, and flipping through all the different CDs and finding source material music. Or cassette tapes, and now it's so much easier because you can, the internet is just there's a treasure trove of, so much content. And then you start getting these ideas, and whether, I hear it with this idea that goes to this idea, and use GarageBand or something similar that's on your computer, and start cutting and splicing those things together to kind of create an idea of what it should sound like musically.
Do you see yourself now? You're still in the game, designing and helping and consulting for other people. You're the fine arts department chair for the Broken Arrow school system, and you still are the grandfather of that program. Do you see AI designing shows in the future? Ooh. If you were going to be in this 5 years, could you see AI stitching together?
Somebody's going to do it.
Oh, it's going to happen, right? I haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
That actually hurts my creative soul to even think about that.
But some bands make it a lot better real quick. Yeah. Okay, so you've done the deep. You've got your nugget. Now you're deep diving. You're pulling in scraps. Do you get together for Fight Club moment? And the one rule of Fight Club is nobody talks about the show at Fight Club. How do you determine? How do you stitch it? Do you just push it all to Jim Wunderlich and say, make this sound good?
Yep. Yeah. Well, so we'll sit there with a kind of a timeline of, we always intend the shows at Broken Arrow to, you have a time range of minimum 7 minutes. If you hit 11 minutes of performance time, at least at Bands of America, you're over time. So you have that kind of 4 minute window of time between 7 and 11. We always tried to be about a 9 minute show. And we would say, okay, the opening is going to be a minute and a half, 30 seconds of development, 30 seconds of big payoff, and 30 seconds to move us to the next production. So that's our opening minute and a half. and it's going to be based off, we like this source material from the internet, off of this tune. Jim Wunderlich, do your magic. Go Jim Wunderlich it up. And that's what he does. Wes will then listen to that first draft, second draft, however many drafts. Goes, I like this, but the pace, we got to the beginning or the big moment too early. Need more development. We need time visually to develop a visual idea before we get to our big moment. And
okay, and we're using people but I happen to know them. So do you ever get I'm the music guy, why don't you just stay in your lane? And the visual guy, going, why are you telling me where the big moment should be? Why don't you just tap notes out on your little computer?
I think you got to have a team that believes in each other, that it's that collaboration, right? That it can't just be the music writer writes music and then gives it to the percussion guy. This is how we used to do things 30 years ago. Music guy would write music. He'd write even blank measures of like, hey, there's going to be percussion in these blank measures. Give it to the percussion guy or gal, and they would write the percussion music. Then it would go to a drill writer, and then the color guard person would look at what they had and then try to do a routine. Those days are long since gone.
So that's my next question.
You can't
now
do
that
that
you've
anymore.
got it, how do you farm it out and in what order? And maybe give us a timeline like, okay, now we're in January. We need to have a first audio, attach some months to it, because we know you got the nugget in October, 2 years in advance, but that's a rarity. Tell me the timeline. So if a band director or band parent is listening and they're thinking, oh, it's so easy now. We're just doing concert band. They don't realize next year's. So can you walk us through that?
There's a whole other layer going on in the background that the kids and the parents really don't see. Hopefully by December, January, you know who your team is going to be for sure. If there's any changes on the design team, January, February, those are the months to start getting that kind of sketch of what the entire program is going to look like. Here's what we're going to look like. Maybe here's a design or a sketch for costuming or a rough sketch idea of a prop. Here's how the music relates to that we're selecting. And then, January through March and April is a lot of the music production time, but drill is going to start as soon as you can get numbers to your drill people, to your drill designer. The Broken Arrow team, Wes and Leon May would write the drill, and they would start.
Did you get your drill on time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You maybe be the only band director in the United States of America that gets their drill on time.
Yeah, I think we would go into band camp with like almost the whole show, and it'd be tempting to want to teach that whole thing during band camp, but we would pace it out. We can talk about that in another moment.
I do want to talk about that. So when you have that team together and they're putting it all together, where does the visual part, the props, the silks, the uniform design, who's in charge of that, and when does that start to evolve?
Well, hopefully program coordinator or, the person, your big idea person needs to be coming up with that. For some other schools, it might be, the color guard instructor wants to have input on what the equipment looks like, the shape of the flag, but there needs to be someone that has like the big picture hat on, and that's, is the program coordinator, program director. The band director should be in consultation with that so that you're getting a similar look on if you're doing a unique uniform for the band, which seems to be common now, that does it tie to the flags, and does it tie into the props? If you're talking about that edge of eternity, if you notice that color scheme was in the props, the pink, the light blue, the royal blue, there was that prop had a big circle through it, was our eternity, is what that symbolized.
Okay.
That big kind of ring that was very bright and pink was in the prop. And then you would also see that broken up into the jacket that was on the band members. That pink carried through to the color guard and into the flags would have the circles or part of those spikes that were on the props. And we always knew that the idea was that ring would rotate at some point. And that's how the show, we knew that was what the ending would be, is our eternity ring would spin mechanically, and remotely from all, I think it was 24 of those props around the field. We knew we wanted props that could be interactive, that they could move as set pieces, not be something that just sits at one place during the entire show, that kids could climb on them, interact with them. They could spin around 360 degrees and create a different stage. We could move them to create different ideas and create different textures. There's even a place in the show where the props make a complete ring around the field, and the band gets into a ring in the center. So that's a visual motif of that edge of eternity.
So there's a reminder, if you're listening to us right now, and it's easy to be memorized by the breadth and depth of knowledge of Darrin Davis, but I would highly encourage you to maybe hit pause here and go find a video, and so that you can see these props and you can see the uniform design. And it's not about that prop, that uniform per se, but it's about understanding the level of detail and thought that even trained people, like I didn't know that the circle represented eternity. And I've watched that show 35 times, Darrin. It's become my favorite show of yours.
Yeah.
It was Aqua and it beat Aqua. And that took something to beat Aqua, because the first show you fall in love with is the show you remember. But let me ask you this. And again, I have to apologize to Chris, because I'm so excited. I'm learning. If you're a beginning band director who doesn't have a program designer, if you don't have the staff that you have and you can't afford, let's say, to do custom stuff, do you recommend that people do shows that have been done so they can see it and hear it and go buy those props? Or, do you recommend, or should a band director just wing it on their own and try and figure it out?
I think there's something to be said for building a program and also building your level of experience. Everyone has to start somewhere, right? So start with things that have worked before and put your spin on it. Maybe take an existing arrangement off of Rangers Publishing that works really well and thin it out. Maybe go like, here's like, instead of having the entire brass play, what if we just had made that a one person to a part, had a little brass octet, those type of things. Take something that's published and easily accessible and not very expensive, makes it sound unique and different really, really quickly. Then there's also that scale that you want to evolve, and then dip your toe into the water maybe the next year about, thinking about how you're going to coordinate the visual design. I mean, you can't do it all. You can't build Rome in a day. So be patient, particularly if you're a young teacher or young director, or if you're band parents and you're at a school that is, continuing to develop. We all are. We all have to find our next thing that we want to do better this year than we did last year. And if we can do that, then you got to call the year as a success.
So if a band parent is listening to this and they see a price tag attached to a program designer, whatever that price tag may be, because it comes in lots of flavors, at what point should a band make that investment and maybe just give a quick, brief description of what a program designer does to parents who think the band director should do everything?
I mean, I can remember the first time that I designed a show, or the first time that I wrote a drill. I know what I got paid for it. And I think I did it because I just wanted to design something and get some experience. And I didn't get paid. There's great young talent out there that we all know that want to be designers, and there are band directors that want to also be designers. And you just got to start somewhere, right? You don't have to go to Neiman Marcus or to Saks Fifth Avenue and get a Prada this or that to start with. Start with something simple and continue to build and grow.
That's a good analogy.
When you start to get it all together, and I'm going to say April, the percussion parts are starting to appear with the MIDI file. That you've got sketches of the guard uniform. You're getting ready to maybe send it off to your uniform producer and the props. You've got sketches on cocktail napkins ready to send off. How confident are you? And yeah, this is going to work. I'm just sure of it.
Well, my great friend Wes Cartwright would say he's 100% confident every single time
about everything.
Here's Darrin Davis, the person who coordinates with Wes, with our program designer, and is also the director of bands. It's like, oh my God, what are we doing? Is this really going to work, or is this going to be a colossal failure? is, are we trying to do too much, or is this really going to happen? I mean, there's a part of that where you got to second guess, but the facade that I give to the students and to the parents is nothing but 100% confidence.
Fake it till you make it.
Oh, man.
So I don't want to go into the season yet, but I do want to follow up that statement with, okay, then at what point typically, or let's say edge of eternity, at what point did you hear it in rehearsal and band camp and went, yeah, we're going to be good? Or is it in October?
Broken Arrow is always typically, we start super slow and we get really, really great at the end of the season. There was something about those kids from 2021 coming out of COVID. They were the hungriest, most coachable, energized students that I am tired of what we didn't get to do the year before, that we're ready to do anything you want us to do. We're up for anything. The kids were amazing. And when you have kids like that are that committed, and we had a design that we knew was pretty good early on, but I tell you, it was maybe around September, Labor Day weekend. We had maybe the first two productions on the field. That if you watch that show, there's a long development of solos and flutes and front ensemble, backfield brass playing. And it all moves to the front and center of the field. And then we turn to the front and kind of let that Broken Arrow power fill the stadium. There was, even at Broken Arrow in our rehearsal stadium, we could tell it was oh my gosh, this is going to be really, really good.
I've watched it a gazillion times, and Chris has watched your show. And we were watching just before you came on because we had some time to kill. And the first big hit, that's the closest I've ever seen you stage your band that early in a show. They're 4 yards off the baseline. Your tubas are off field on the ground, and I've never seen you stage. That's typically how you end a show. And I was amazed by how big you went as early on as you did. And the reason I bring it up now is because that's a design choice. That was a choice that was made in January. Did you have all those thoughts in your mind when you sent it off to Leon, your drill writer?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Wes says this is going to be a tight moment for the brass down front. The color guard's going to fill the field. The woodwinds at that point were still manipulating, moving the props around the field. We knew that was not by accident, that moment ended up being that powerful.
How many moments are by accident? Any? You're Broken Arrow, so not a lot.
Trial and error.
The closer for Broken Arrow that year, which was one of my favorites we've ever done, we got a little behind on getting the show on the field, and it caused some rewrites that had to happen musically because it just didn't sound quite right. And then we got the drill and the music just the way it ended up. When we taught it, we could tell it was going to be really great, but it was really hard. There's a place in there where we're going about 210 beats per minute, super fast, and the woodwinds are doing one step per bar, and it's in 3. So, 70 beats per minute, backfield, playing all these notes. That was hard, to control your body as they were moving. It just needed to look effortlessly across the field before the brass came right down front for the very, very ending. That was a challenge. We could tell on that show it was going to be pretty solid. And, and just to go back to that opening moment about how big it was there, to start, the score that we got from Jim, it had 24 measures that were all peak volume all the way through.
Wow.
And if you listen to that, you get about 8 counts of how big and impressive we can play. And then immediately we started shaping and doing these musical contours and showing our musicality, showing some, in the business for musicians, for you band parents, it's expression, or it's shaping of music, the pace of getting louder and quieter, all in a pace together, shows how musical you can be. If it's all just loud for a long time or all soft for a long time, it doesn't engage you, doesn't keep your interest.
So Chris has completed our adjudication certification process. Did you, I don't know if you know that, we did an adjudication episode. We actually printed out certificates.
We did.
I saw that.
fancy certificates and an info. Chris is a proud graduate, the first graduate of the Band Dads podcast certified adjudication process. So he's getting, Chris is way more educated because he spends so much time filming our band and listening to our band than the average band parent. But what are some things, talk to Chris for a second about things you would tell parents to look for or think about that they would never know is happening in the design process?
Is to listen with big ears and watch with big eyes.
Okay.
I think parents, we tend to put our eyes to where your kid is going to be.
That's fair.
Right away, and want to listen to what your kid is playing, if it's percussion or trumpet or clarinet, is to start getting to be more cinematic in your ears and your eyes, and start almost looking through the group and like let your eyes go, oh, there's something cool that goes up over here when something goes down over here with the equipment, and there's a flourish of music that does the same thing. And so, we start calling that coordination, right? Do you see what you're hearing? And is there a reason that there's a rifle thing that fits with all these crazy fast notes that maybe woodwinds play? They're typically paired together or something like that, where you're looking at how different groupings on the field interact with each other.
So that being said, because there is so much happening, and we're talking about this is all happening within a 7 to 11 minute time frame. How many times do you think a parent, or really anybody who's not that well versed in the art form itself, should probably watch or digest a show before they can really start to understand it? Because even everything you're saying is true, I'm not going to catch that the first, second, maybe even third time. So how many times do you think it's fair to like absorb a show to really understand it and see what's happening?
Familiarity, seeing and hearing things enough makes a difference. Like, I don't know if any of you guys are Star Wars fans. How many of you can quote different scenes from Star Wars or a Seinfeld episode?
Right.
It's because you're ultra familiar with it. You know the nuance of what's coming up next, or whatever your favorite movie is. Like I for some reason, I've started rewatching the Mission Impossible movies.
Gotcha. And
it's like, oh, wait a minute. I caught that in movie number 1 that they used in movie number 8 that was in the theater, this past month.
Yeah.
And so the more familiar you are with the musical content and what you're seeing, you're going to find different Easter eggs. And that's what designers do. They try to put Easter eggs out there, not only for the listener and the parent, but for the judge to pick up too.
Right. Yeah. That was so to Scott's point, when we were watching it before, and yeah, my view's a little bit, I guess, limited watching the show for the first couple of times. Plus, we're watching, and actually probably think it's similar to watching it live. We're watching a multicam view, and watching a multicam view obviously puts your focus in certain places, right, where you do miss opportunities. But my daughter plays sousaphone and is a sousaphone section leader, and Scott would tell you, one of the first things I said to them was like, oh, the sousaphones are right up front. Look at them. They're right up front. Instead of being standing behind everybody in the brass, they're right up front. And I was very proud and happy to see those sousaphones up front. So
I love that. I watched the 2021 BA show a couple hours ago before we got on this call together, and I didn't watch the version that I normally watch, which is a multicam. I found one that was just on YouTube that was someone up in the upper deck of the stadium, where I saw everything like you would if you're in the crow's nest of the stadium.
Yeah.
And my wife and I watched it together, and it's like, I'm not used to seeing it this way. And it makes me appreciate some other details that were in the show that I had, maybe had forgotten about in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
We've talked about where the kernel comes from, be it visual, musical, or literary, or whatever it is. We talked about, it starts with a nugget and then you just start putting things together till it works. We talked about the different roles and responsibilities. We talked about the calendaring process and when the visual elements. So we've brought you almost up to what's going to be episode 2, but I have one more question from me, and Chris may have others for this episode. And I know that because I've been there for this, this is, how do you educate the parents? I mean, and the Broken Arrow parents are pretty sophisticated, likely far more sophisticated because they only see great bands and greatness and great instructors. But do you sit and say, okay, parents, it's called The Edge of Eternity. But let me point out some of the Easter eggs, or let me tell you why we built this, or let me tell you why we're calendaring it this way, or going to a new uniform. How much parent education happens at Broken Arrow?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of that actually quite a bit. Maybe not in that much detail about, why is this edge of eternity, but because there's some of that magic that needs to happen with the kids first, and it really evolves towards the end of the season. But definitely we'll spend time. Typically it's the either September or October band parent meeting where I'll pull up the source material and play some segments of source material from the original music, and then play a little bit of our creative recording that, Jim Wunderlich's recording of what it would sound like from his computer. And then I'll ask the parents, like, hey, you've been at rehearsals. Does that sound familiar? And of course you see a lot of smiles and wide eyes. And it was like, oh, that's interesting to see how that comes together. And then I actually will put the drill video up on the big screen, and kind of then go back and play a segment of drill so they can see what it is the kids are trying to accomplish and achieve at a really high level, when you can see all those little computerized versions of the band doing it really, really perfect. And then the thing that's most important to me, though, Scott and Chris, is before we go to our first contest, is I spend time with the parents I do a crash course on judging, like you guys did in your podcast.
Awesome. Do you have a certificate?
I don't. I'm going to send them to the Band Dads podcast for sure to get their certificates. But I also talk about, here's how we become very classy and first class audience members to not only appreciate our band's performance at a band contest, but we're going to appreciate every other band and child that performs with another band. And we're going to give them our enthusiastic gratitude at the end of a performance.
I think that's really, really, really important and fantastic that you do that, because I would tell you that I've been around plenty of competitions and parents who maybe don't always feel that positive about the experience they have with other bands. But I think some of it comes from, it comes from naivety, right? I think that's part of the point of why we have the conversations we do, is because we feel like if we can really educate people on what's going on, if they can understand it better, it just empowers them to appreciate, to your point, to take the blinders off and just stop looking at your child and understand what's happening and what's coming together and being created on the field for every school that comes out there, every competition. That's kind of the point of all of this. So I appreciate you saying that. And I definitely think that's a fantastic exercise, that if it's not being done other places, that's something I would encourage, because I think that probably goes a long way for your school, the support that parents give you, for sure.
I can honestly tell you that at Broken Arrow, we never talk about a placement, or we never talk about a score. We talk about competing against ourselves and being better tomorrow than we were today. And it's not about the placement. It's just about the achievement. A band doesn't get to go play defense against another band. If so, Avon, I'm out there for you. I'd be playing defense against you and like trying to, keep you from being great, and I love the guys from Avon. They're my great friends.
Right.
But it's not how it works in our activity, and we're used to, like, when there's a winner, there has to be a loser. And that's not what band is about.
Yeah.
And about everybody being winners. And that's because you don't get a placement that you thought your band should get. It doesn't mean that your band's not good. It just means that there's a lot of great bands out there.
I think that's a great place to pause. And before we actually get into what a season looks like, what band camp looks like, just what an incredible wealth of knowledge you have. And Darrin, we appreciate you sharing that with us. Again, this is just part one of a 2-part episode. So the next episode is actually going to talk about the actual pragmatism of putting that production on field. So again, we encourage you, if you get the chance, even if it's just to watch a little bit of it, to Google the Edge of Eternity, the 2021 Broken Arrow show, the highest scoring show in BOA history, and get it in your ear and in your mind's eye, so that you can have a better conceptual understanding when we talk about what it took to actually get that from mid-July to the end or mid-November, when they put the gold medals around your kids' necks and you hoisted your 4th eagle. Darrin, just thanks for being you. I mean, I've known you 22 years, and I learn from you every single time that I spend time with you. So thank you very much for your brilliance. I'm Scott Lang. He's
Chris Flynn.
And
I'm Darrin Davis.
And we're the
Band Dads.
There you go.
Thanks, everyone.
Wow, Scott, you were so sincere. That was so sweet. Did you get a little tear there, Darrin? Did you tear up with how sincere that was? Aw.
Darrin stopped listening to me years ago, Chris. He probably has me on.
This is really vodka, so.
Oof, good call. To stay up to date with the Band Dads podcast, visit our website, banddadspodcast.com. Want to communicate with the Band Dads? Send an email to feedback@banddadspodcast.com. The Band Dads podcast is a 5 Deuce Media production. For more information, visit 5deucemedia.com. That's numeral 5deucemedia.com. For more information on Scott Lang leadership and solutions for music education, visit scottlang.net.